President Cyril Ramaphosa laid on the charm as that South Africa-Saudi Arabia investment forum in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia wrapped up, highlighting a range of mutual interests and opportunities that could boost trade and investment between our two countries, leaving the kingdom there, as we've reported, with 17 memoranda of understanding. Let's explore more the bottom line benefit for South Africa. And Director of Africa-Asia Dialogue, Thembisa Fakude, has been watching developments and joins me now. Thembisa, good evening to you and welcome. Trade already between our countries at an estimated $5 billion. This whole trip was aimed at significantly elevating that. Given these agreements and MOUs, what does the future trade picture look like between our two countries?
Well, it certainly does look positive. And particularly now as South Africa wants to establish its energy independence. Saudi Arabia has undertaken, or discussions are ongoing regarding that refinery in Durban, which will help South Africa boost its energy reserves. So that's very important. But overall, the trip has been very fruitful. We've seen a number of bilaterals and memorandum of understanding signed. Importantly, of course, that Togo Didiza was the minister was in charge and who met with Agri SA on Friday, also was part of that meeting. And Saudi Arabia is looking, as you know, for fresh produce from various countries in Africa, and South Africa is certainly going to benefit from those discussions that have taken place over the weekend.
Because as you say, Saudi Arabia not immune to some of the effects of the war in Ukraine. Well, let's go back to your energy point. Saudi's NEOM renewable energy project of particular interest to South Africa. And of course, South Africa is the world's largest platinum producer, a key component for its hydrogen fuel cells. It seems a no-brainer that they have expressed interest to partner with South Africa on this.
Well, I think those discussions are still going to take place. And I think this is just the beginning of bigger relations or economic relations between Saudi Arabia and South Africa. And as has always been the case, Saudi Arabia would like to test the waters before going full steams in terms of investment. And they've tried doing this in South Africa, but there's been some challenges over the past couple of years between, ensuring that there's this full steam ahead of economic activity between the two countries. But I think this relationship that has, to an extent, given a restart or a reboot this time around, will ensure that future investments continue to come from Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia's got deep pockets, as you know, and they're looking at diversifying their economy. The mainstay, activity of the economy so far has been gas and oil, and now they're looking at diversifying the economy and ensuring that they bring in investment to benefit their very youthful population.
You touched on oil earlier, and I just want to go to oil in two ways. We'll talk about Biden in a moment, but let's talk about the oil price and this idea that you referenced of increasing South Africa's oil refining capacity as an example of maybe some of the futurescaping that South Africa is doing with Saudi Arabia to ensure, that these trade agreements don't have to be kind of renewed annually, but that they can go on into, well, not into perpetuity, but at least much further into the future.
Yes, I think that's what they're looking at. And in fact, I think the comforting fact for South Africa will be that Mohammed bin Salman has just been installed as a prime minister, and that kind of ensures a sense of longevity between the South Africans and the Saudis. So you'll see that relationship going ahead. We don't know, of course, what will happen in South Africa post 2024, but the fact that you have got a permanent head of state in Saudi Arabia will ensure that whatever commitments they make now do endure the period beyond 2024 in South Africa after the national elections.
Saudi expressing a desire there, you heard earlier, Thembisa, to join BRICS. What does this reveal about the changing alliances in global politics, given some of the recent iciness between the US and Saudi, with US President Joe Biden criticizing Saudi for cutting its oil supply, but also African countries looking for new alliance partners in massive trade blocs?
Well, I think, judging by President Cyril Ramaphosa's tone, he was at pains to actually admit that there will be those negotiations, because he himself finds himself in a much more awkward position being a lone voice within BRICS at the moment. We all know his close relationship with Joe Biden. BRICS is currently consists of, amongst others, China and Russia. And that's, to an extent, or to some people, an oxymoron to have Cyril Ramaphosa being part of this formation, while at the same time continue to pursue openly his relationship with Joe Biden. But having said that, there are many other countries that have indicated interest in joining BRICS. We know that Turkey has also indicated of joining BRICS. Now you have Saudi Arabia. Egypt has also indicated that they want to join BRICS. So BRICS seem set to expand. And as you say, the entire objective, of course, to establish an alternative to the Western hegemony that continues to push backward, particularly China and Russia, as they continue their expansionist project in the region.
But there are some complexities engraved in the way these the decisions to join or not to join, are shaped. Thinking about Saudi Arabia's, dispatching of humanitarian aid to Ukraine, and again wanting to be a part of, the diplomatic, economic bloc that also includes Russia.
Yes, sure. But it's going to be a difficulty, particularly for South Africa, given that South Africa's foreign policy prioritizes, to an extent, at least over the past couple of years, human rights. And what we see happening right now, the addition of Saudi Arabia, given Saudi's controversial position when it comes to human rights, particularly after the killing of Jamal Khashoggi in Istanbul in 2018, will put South Africa in a much more difficult position. It's already a point of concern for some of us, knowing that Mohammed bin Salman is accused of having killed Jamal Khashoggi, and yet South Africa did not blink twice in terms of accepting this invitation, and it went ahead and had this meeting with Mohammed bin Salman, notwithstanding, if you remember, that Joe Biden refused to shake the hand of Mohammed bin Salman, preferring to have that bump fist, which actually backlashed in the United States following what Joe Biden had said during his presidential campaign, that he was going to render Mohammed bin Salman a pariah and he was not going to deal with him. But alas, we saw him dealing with him. So there's that cloud that still hangs over Mohammed bin Salman, and I'm not quite sure whether it was a 100% prudent thing, notwithstanding, of course, the economic benefit that we're getting out of this trip. But the human rights record of Mohammed bin Salman in Saudi Arabia are indeed a serious concern for many of us observing from afar.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting, seeing where South Africa, allies itself in terms of its own, pursuit of human rights records and the recognition of countries isolated by other parts of the world. And you've got to think about their support for Palestine, for example, that these, the way in which these international relationships are managed and guided really depends on what the primary interest of any given country is at the time. And for South Africa, undoubtedly, it would be on investment and it would be on energy. I wish we had more time to talk, Thembisa, but we appreciate your insight. Thank you so much. Thembisa Fakude is the director of the Africa-Asia Dialogues.